dropped the blade back up the bulldozer. Now, this woman in a knockoff HOA enforcement jacket came at me like she thought I was about to demolish the White House, yelling over the hum of the engine flashlights shining everywhere, her little crew blocking the way by the creek behind my cabin. That's the funny part. Looking back, these folks had no clue they just barged onto an active water monitoring zone that's directly coordinated with the FBI. What I was doing out there in the mud wasn't some landscaping hobby, wasn't even really my project. I was running a federal operation 6 months in the making with a secret that was about to blow the roof off this entire neighborhood. The kind of secret that, once it hit daylight, would turn everyone's world inside out. And the best part, the FBI wasn't coming. They were literally sitting in the car right behind me. Now, the day started out just like any other Tuesday in Pine Valley Estates, except I'd rigged up my 4K camera in the Bulldozer cab part of this little documentary series I'd been filming. Not that anyone needed to know about that yet. If you'd told me a year ago my quiet work restoring the creek behind my late grandfather's place would turn into a YouTube hit with 100,000 people watching, I'd have laughed in your face. But here I was just trying to grab some soil samples and maybe get my hands a little dirty when suddenly I'm facing Miranda, Sterling Pine Valley HOA president, standing there like she's leading a SWAT raid. Clipboard held up like a shield, her enforcement team behind her. Bob, the retired insurance adjuster, Janet, the part-time yoga instructor who found her true calling in neighborhood compliance, and Derek, a college kid earning $20 an hour to play mall cop. They had the matching jackets and everything, but law enforcement, please. These were neighbors with nothing better to do and a real taste for flexing whatever fake power the HOA gave them. Miranda stepped up and announced with the solemnity of someone reading the Constitution that I was in violation of Pine Valley Community Guideline 3B, something about unauthorized earth disturbance. Then, Section 23.7 for heavy machinery noise, Section 61.2 for landscape modification without a permit. She expected me to fall apart, but honestly all I could think about was how perfect this was going to look in my docuseries about environmental red tape versus small-town busybodies. What none of them knew, what not a soul in Pine Valley suspected, was that my unauthorized bulldozer work was part of a federal investigation into toxic dumping and water supply contamination running undercover for the better part of half a year. See, I'm not just Jake Rivers, unemployed environmental engineer trying to keep my grandfather's place from falling apart. I'm Jake Rivers, technical consultant to the FBI's Environmental Crimes Unit, and today's bulldozer job, that was authorized at the highest level, every shovel of dirt recorded for federal evidence. The creek behind my cabin was just the tip of the iceberg. What we were really digging up was decades of corporate secrets, and the mess these companies had hidden right under the feet of people like Miranda Sterling. "You want to see something?" I asked, cool as I could manage, reaching for my phone and flipping to my YouTube channel. The latest video, federal investigation, Pine Valley Creek, sitting at 200,000 views and climbing thumbnails, me in EPA gear beside a pile of scientific equipment. Big, bold letters, "What's really in our water?" Miranda's face twitched when she saw that subscriber count, the verification check. She tried to play it off, but I caught that flicker of fear because suddenly this wasn't some anonymous homeowner. I was a guy with a camera, a following, and apparently the power to make her famous for all the wrong reasons. Bob, the old insurance guy, started whispering with Janet. Derek's eyes got wide. I could feel the story turning in real time. These enforcers had come to intimidate me, but now they realized every move was being recorded for an audience that dwarfed their entire HOA. I pointed over my shoulder to the black SUV parked 50 yards away. "That's Agent Chen's ride, FBI Environmental Crimes," I said. "So unless you want to explain to a couple federal agents why you're blocking an ongoing investigation, you might want to rethink your strategy here." You could actually see the color drain out of Miranda's face. Still, she wasn't going down easy. "I don't care if that's the president's car," she snapped, trying to sound tough even as her hand shook on her phone. "This is Pine Valley property, and no agency supersedes our rules." I watched her dial her lawyer because nothing says I'm in charge like calling for backup at 8 in the morning while Bob poked around the bulldozer and Janet started filming on her phone, probably thinking she'd go viral as the next Karen v. FBI. Derek just looked like he wanted to melt into the grass. The whole thing felt surreal, like some B-movie about suburban politics gone wild. But I knew what I had to do. I pulled up my tablet, logged into the Federal Environmental Database, DOJ Seal Level 7 clearance, and let them all see. Bob read over my shoulder, then took a step back from the bulldozer like it might explode. This isn't a landscaping permit, I explained. This is a federal authorization for evidence collection. Everything here is potential evidence in a federal case, even this conversation. You could see the fear ripple through them. Janet put her phone down. Derek stared at his shoes. Miranda finally finished with her lawyer and returned trying to sound defiant, but only managing bitter. My attorney says federal agencies don't trump HOA covenants, she said, but the words rang hollow. I thanked her for her dedication to community standards, then explained that Pine Valley Creek fed water treatment plants serving 40,000 people, and that maybe she should ask herself why a federal investigation had been going on in her neighborhood for 6 months. Within hours, the whole thing blew up online. Miranda started a Facebook group called Save Pine Valley from fake feds, and suddenly there were 2,000 people convinced I was some kind of eco-terrorist with a fake badge and a camera. They clipped footage, edited out Agent Chen's voice, plastered the internet with hashtags, #FakeFederalJake, #SaveOurCreek. The suburban meme war was on. But you know what? Most of the angry comments came from new accounts with generic profile pics and cut-and-paste writing. It wasn't hard to figure out Miranda had hired a social media company to manufacture outrage and drown out the real story. But the real residents, they started messaging me quietly at first. Mrs. Patterson from Elm Street wanted to know if the investigation was connected to the weird taste in her tap water. The Rodriguez family wondered about their daughter's skin rashes. People whispered about neighbors moving away with mysterious illnesses. That's when it hit me. Miranda's campaign to discredit me had backfired. The more she raged online, the more people started digging into the real issues. So I responded the only way I knew how, episode 9 of my docuseries interviews with families who'd left Pine Valley and the health problems that haunted them. It exploded 1.2 million views in 24 hours. The comment section lit up with stories of sickness, contaminated water miscarriages that stopped after moving away. And then came the twist. Nobody expected a midnight sabotage job on my bulldozer. Professional surgical hydraulic lines cut, fuel tank filled with bleach monitoring equipment destroyed. My security cam caught 2 figures in dark clothes, one with an HOA jacket. This was no prank, this was a message. I didn't call the sheriff. I sent everything to Agent Chen. 30 minutes later, half a dozen federal vehicles, rolled up crime scene tape went around my cabin, and suddenly the quiet little HOA drama had become a full-blown federal obstruction case. Agent Chen showed up with a tech team straight out of a disaster movie, swapping out my homemade gear for machines that could analyze the water down to the molecule. The whole neighborhood watched. Mrs. Patterson brought coffee and asked if the vandalism was tied to her health issues. Bob from the enforcement team offered to help. Even the county deputy who'd spent the week trying to keep the peace showed up to tell Agent Chen about the pressure he'd been getting from community leaders to shut the whole thing down. And then just as we started piecing it together, Walter Hayes, a 75-year-old retired inspector, knocked on my door with a folder of blueprints and photos. He'd kept quiet for 25 years, but now he handed over evidence showing the decorative lake was really a cover for underground storage industrial barrels buried beneath the neighborhood, connected to the water supply. Not only was my investigation real, it was uncovering a 20-year criminal conspiracy with Pine Valley residents living above a toxic dump. I should have waited for Chen, but I couldn't, so I went down the access tunnel myself. Camera rolling, what I saw was enough to haunt anyone, barrels leaking into the ground, marked with names of companies I'd seen before, and paperwork stashed in waterproof bins that proved Sterling Development and others had been dumping illegally for decades. The evidence was enough to take down half the town. But Miranda wasn't done. She called in a fake report to the FBI accusing me of impersonating a federal officer. Suddenly, 2 teams of agents were on my doorstep, one to investigate me, one to support Agent Chen's work. For 20 wild minutes, it was feds verifying feds while I stood there with the camera that could make or break everything. Chen shut it down fast, showed them my credentials, the evidence, the live feed of contamination, spreading beyond Pine Valley. The neighborhood woke up. Folks who'd feared Miranda now demanded answers. Why their kids were sick, why people moved away, why the HOA worked so hard to cover it up. The story climaxed with Agent Chen live streaming the evidence to 200,000 people, announcing federal warrants for the whole conspiracy, Miranda's name front and center. I watched as the woman who tried to threaten me into silence was read her rights still in her plastic badge, and the community she'd bullied for years finally stood up and reclaimed their voice. But you know, the most satisfying part wasn't Miranda getting cuffed. It was watching the people realize they could take back their power. They started holding their own meetings, demanding environmental tests, and forming a new resident-led watchdog group. Bob apologized on camera for backing Miranda, admitting he should have known anyone that desperate to block testing had something to hide. The bulldozer that started it all sits by the creek now, a monument to what happens when you refuse to be bullied and keep digging for the truth. Pine Valley's lake is clear again. The underground chambers are clean, and the neighborhood has become a case study in environmental justice, featured everywhere from Netflix to EPA training videos. Miranda's serving a 22-year sentence, and the companies involved are paying millions to fix what they broke. We celebrate Environmental Truth Day every year now, and I bring my little girl to my dad's grave. He was an EPA inspector who died fighting the same kind of corruption, and it's his voice I hear when I start doubting if one person can really make a difference. Every time she asks if she can help test the water, I know the real win isn't the clean lake or the views or the headlines. It's raising a new generation who refuses to let things slide. So if you're watching this and wondering if you should speak up about something that doesn't feel right in your own community, let me tell you, you don't need permission to start digging. You just need the guts to keep asking questions even when everyone wants you to stop. Every town's got a Miranda Sterling, every town's got a secret someone's trying to keep buried, but there's always a way to get to the truth if you keep pushing. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever run into a Miranda in your own life? Someone who tried to use fake authority to keep you quiet? Share your story below, because the fight for truth never really ends. It just moves to the next town over. If you think this story matters, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let the world know that sometimes the loudest voice is the one that refuses to be silenced. The truth is always worth it.